From the cotton fields of the South to the global stages of today, black music has always been the pulse of America. When enslaved Africans were stripped of language and culture, they used rhythm, call, and response, and song as a way to hold on to identity and survive oppression. Those spirituals and work songs became the foundation for gospel. Blues and jazz, the earliest uniquely American sounds. The blues told stories of pain, survival, and everyday struggles, laying the groundwork for rock, roll, and country music. Jazz, born in New Orleans, became America's first major cultural export, symbolizing freedom, improvisation, and innovation. Hip hop, emerging from the Bronx in the 1970s, gave a voice to marginalized communities and is now the most dominant cultural force worldwide. What makes black music the nation's heartbeat isn't just its popularity, it's the way it has always reflected America's truth. From Billie Holiday singing Strange Fruit about lynching, to Tupac rapping about systemic injustice, to Beyoncé using her platform to highlight black pride, the music carries the struggles, resilience, and brilliance of a people who refuse to be silenced. Even today, when you hear the rhythm of a drum, a gospel choir's harmony, or a hip hop beat blasting through speakers, you're not just hearing entertainment, you're hearing the soul of America beating in sync with black creativity. When we talk about the food that defines America, we cannot separate it from the contributions of black people. What we now call soul food was born from both hardship and creativity. Enslaved Africans were given the scraps and least desirable cuts of meat, yet through seasoning, ingenuity, and tradition, they turned those scraps into flavorful, nourishing meals. This transformation of limitation into richness is not just about cooking. It is a metaphor for survival, resilience, and the ability to create joy even in the midst of struggle. Soul food staples like fried chicken, collard greens, cornbread, yams, and gumbo are more than just dishes on a plate. They are cultural symbols, each carrying centuries of history. For example, greens simmered slowly in pots were not only hearty meals, but also held deep spiritual significance. Many black families still eat greens on New Year's Day as a tradition for prosperity. Gumbo, with its West African okra roots, is a culinary reminder of the cultural blending that defines America. These foods carry the fingerprints of generations who cooked not just to feed bodies, but to keep memories and traditions alive. The influence of black cuisine extends far beyond soul food itself. Barbecue, often hailed as a staple of American gatherings, was perfected and passed down through black pitmasters in the South. Techniques like slow smoking meats, carefully blending spices, and using firewood to enhance flavor came from African and indigenous traditions that black cooks preserved and elevated. Today, whether it's backyard cookouts or world-famous BBQ competitions, much of what people celebrate as classic American food rests firmly on black culinary foundations. Beyond flavor, black cuisine represents community, love, and survival. Meals were never just about eating, they were about gathering. The Sunday dinner table, filled with food made from the heart, became a place where families reconnected after long weeks of struggle. It became a space of healing, storytelling, and passing down traditions. Even today, in Black households across the country, food is the glue that holds people together, binding past and present with each bite. When America exports its food identity to the world, what people often taste first is the influence of Black cooking. From jazz clubs serving fried catfish in Harlem, to gumbo festivals in Louisiana, to Southern style BBQ joints in big cities like New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles, the spirit of African American cuisine is inseparable from what outsiders think of as American food. Just as Black music became the world's rhythm, Black food became the nation's flavor. Uh, in short, to taste America is to taste the creativity and endurance of Black people. Each dish carries a story of struggle and triumph, reminding us that Black cuisine doesn't just fill stomachs, it feeds the soul of the nation itself. Black communities have always been at the forefront of shaping what America looks and sounds like. From the way people talk to the way they dress, Black creativity has continually set the standard for what later becomes mainstream American culture. Often, what begins in Black neighborhoods, schools, churches, and clubs gets adopted, imitated, and eventually commercialized by the wider culture. This cycle shows not only the brilliance of Black innovation, but also how deeply it is woven into the very fabric of America's identity. To understand how America moves, speaks, and presents itself, one must look first at Black style and language. Fashion has long been a stage where Black expression has challenged norms and created entirely new aesthetics. During the Jazz Age, young Black men popularized the zoot suit with its oversized jackets and wide leg trousers, a bold rejection of conformity and a symbol of confidence. Later, in the civil rights era, clothing became a political statement, from the dignified Sunday best worn at marches to the afros, dashikis, and leather jackets of the Black Power movement, which expressed pride in African heritage and resistance to oppression. By the time hip hop emerged in the 1970s and 1980s, fashion was once again transformed sneakers, gold chains, Kangol hats, and oversized jackets became more than streetwear, they became global trends. Today, much of modern streetwear culture, worth billions of dollars, is rooted in hip hop's fashion language. Hairstyles also tell a powerful story of cultural influence and resistance. The history of Black hair in America is not only about beauty, but also about survival and self-expression in a society that often rejected natural Black features. Styles like cornrows, braids, afros, and dreadlocks were not just aesthetic choices. They were declarations of identity. In the 1960s and 70s, the afro became an unmistakable political symbol of Black pride, rejecting Eurocentric beauty standards. In recent decades, natural hair movements have reclaimed the beauty of Black textures, influencing mainstream fashion, beauty industries, and even legislation like the CRWN Act to fight hair discrimination. Today, braids, twists, fades, and edges, once ridiculed or deemed unprofessional, are now celebrated and widely copied, proving that Black hair culture has shaped global beauty standards. Language, too, carries the undeniable imprint of Black America, African American Vernacular English ACE AAV, with its rich vocabulary, rhythm, And creativity has shaped the way America speaks. Words and phrases like kook, on fleek, woke, obeyed, throwing shade, all come from Black communities, yet quickly spread into mainstream and internet culture. Even the cadence and flow of AAV have influenced comedy, film, and social media communication. Entire industries, from advertising to entertainment, borrow heavily from the expressive power of Black speech patterns. What many call slang often originates in AAV, but eventually becomes the standard lexicon of American youth, showing just how much Black language drives cultural change. Music and style work hand in hand in shaping culture. Hip hop, for example, was not just about beats and rhymes, it was also about how one dressed, spoke, and carried themselves. The swagger, the handshakes, the graffiti, the dances, all of these became visual and verbal languages that defined a generation. Rap lyrics introduced phrases and metaphors that filtered into everyday American speech, while hip hop's fashion became the template for global streetwear. Black language and style are inseparable forces. One reinforces the other, creating a rhythm and image that America continually adopts and markets. Ultimately, what America calls pop culture is often a reflection of Black culture. The clothes people wear, the way they talk online, the dances that go viral, and even the way celebrities brand themselves can usually be traced back to innovations from Black communities. Yet it's not just about trends, it's about the spirit of transformation, the ability to turn resistance into beauty, and the creativity to shape identity against the backdrop of struggle. Black style and language don't just decorate America, they define it. They give the country its voice, its look, and its cultural heartbeat. Without them, America would be unrecognizable. One of the most undeniable signs that Black people are the soul of America is the way they have forced the nation to live up to its own ideals of freedom and democracy. From the earliest days of enslavement, Black resistance challenged the hypocrisy of a country that declared liberty and justice for all, while holding millions in bondage. Every rebellion, every runaway journey on the Underground Railroad, and every act of defiance was not only a fight for personal freedom, but also a demand that America live up to its promises. Black struggle has always been a mirror held up to the nation, exposing its contradictions and pushing it toward justice. The civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s stands as one of the clearest examples of this. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. used the language of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence to demand inclusion in the American dream. His vision of nonviolent resistance challenged America to embody its democratic values, not in theory, but in practice. At the same time, figures like Malcolm X confronted the nation with a harder truth that democracy without justice is an illusion. Together with countless grassroots organizers, pastors, students, and ordinary citizens, these leaders transformed the nation's political landscape, dismantling Jim Crow segregation and paving the way for landmark legislation like the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. But this struggle was not just about Black rights. It was about reshaping the very definition of democracy itself. when Rosa Parks refused to give up her bus seat. She was not only standing up for her dignity, she was sparking a movement that challenged America's entire racial hierarchy. When black children integrated schools under hostile mobs, they were forcing America to confront whether it truly believed in equality of opportunity. When marchers crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, their blood and tears watered the soil of democracy, making it stronger for every citizen. These acts of courage expanded freedoms that benefited all Americans, regardless of race, proving that the fight for Black liberation is inseparable from the fight for democracy itself. Even beyond the civil rights era, Black activism has continued to be the moral compass of the nation. The Black Lives Matter movement, born in the wake of police violence, echoes the same demand that America must deliver on its promise of justice for all. By calling attention to systemic racism in law enforcement, housing, healthcare, and education, activists are not just fighting for Black survival, they are forcing the nation to confront how far it still falls short of its ideals. These movements have sparked global conversations, making it clear that the Black freedom struggle is not just an American issue, but a human one. At every stage of history, Black Americans have risked their lives, their safety, and their livelihoods to advance the democratic project. From voting rights to labor rights, from women's rights to LGBTQ+ rights, Black activism has inspired and strengthened other movements for justice. The blueprint of nonviolent protest, community organizing, and speaking truth to power has become a model for struggles worldwide. America's democracy is fragile, but it has been expanded and protected time and time again through the persistence of Black people demanding recognition, respect, and equality. In truth, democracy in America would be hollow without the contributions of Black activism. It was built on their backs, but it has been defended and renewed by their courage. The nation's laws, institutions, and cultural consciousness have been reshaped by those who refused to accept oppression as permanent. Every gain in justice, every expansion of rights, and every step closer to true equality has come through the fire of Black struggle. That is why to speak of American democracy is, in many ways, to speak of Black America, because they have been its truest defenders and its boldest dreamers. The story of Black people in America is, at its core, a story of resilience. Torn from their homelands, stripped of language, culture, and identity, enslaved Africans faced one of the most brutal systems in human history. Yet, even in chains, they sang songs of hope, preserved fragments of their heritage, and found ways to nurture families and communities. That ability to hold on to humanity in the face of dehumanization is not just remarkable, it represents the essence of what America claims to value: perseverance, hope, and the refusal to be broken. After slavery ended, the challenges did not. Jim Crow laws, lynching, and systemic exclusion from political and economic life sought to keep Black people at the margins of society. But instead of surrendering, they built schools, churches, and businesses. Entire communities like Black Wall Street in Tulsa thrived even in the shadow of hatred and violence. Black churches became not just places of worship, but centers of education, social life, and political organizing. This resilience was more than survival. It was an act of defiance, a way of saying we will build even when the world tries to tear us down. Um, Cultural resilience has been just as powerful. Out of oppression came art forms that reshaped the world. Spirituals turned into gospel, blues gave birth to jazz, hop emerged from poverty stricken neighborhoods, and each of these forms became global languages of creativity. The same can be said for literature, poetry, and visual art, where voices like Langston Hughes, Maya Angelou, James Baldwin, and Toni Morrison transformed pain into beauty and truth. Black creativity has always been a way of reclaiming dignity, telling one's story when society refused to listen, and leaving an indelible mark on the world. Economic and political resilience also tell the story of Black endurance. Despite exclusion from fair wages, housing, and opportunities, Black communities have continuously pushed forward. The Great Migration saw millions of Black families move north, reshaping cities like Chicago, Detroit, and New York with their labor, culture, and vision. Each generation faced barriers, yet each generation found ways to rise, whether through labor organizing, entrepreneurship, or political action. Figures like Shirley Chisholm, Barack Obama, and Kamala Harris embody the results of this relentless determination to claim space within America's political system. Resilience also lives in everyday stories, not just in the headlines. It is in the grandmother who worked multiple jobs to send her children to school. It is in the father who taught his son to be proud of his heritage, even when the world told him otherwise. It is in the young activists marching today, chanting the same calls for justice their ancestors once cried out, refusing to let their voices be silenced. This everyday endurance is what keeps communities alive, passing down strength like an inheritance. Ultimately, resilience is what defines the American spirit, but it has been most fully embodied by Black Americans. Their ability to turn tragedy into triumph, to transform oppression into art, and to wrestle hope out of despair has shaped the nation at its core. The American dream is often spoken of as the chance to rise against all odds. No community reflects that more deeply than Black America. Their resilience is not just personal survival, it is the fuel that has kept the nation moving forward, generation after generation.